So here it is. This is the ford that they had to cross. During a 6-hour period, 13,000 Union soldiers crossed over this water, splashing through it as they were going in that direction. And those soldiers were hot and tired, wore out from the march, green, never really been in combat before, never really had a march in their life other than what they did at camp. And now they were out here footsore, splashing through the water on the way to the biggest battle they've ever seen in their life. Death and destruction lay ahead, and a lot of them didn't even know what to expect. It must have been an amazing sight. They were thirsty, leaning down in this water behind me, trying to get something to drink as they were crossing. Can you imagine being so tired and so thirsty? This is an amazing place to be. I'm really glad I'm out here to see this. May 5th of 1864, Grant comes out here to this clearing that's kind of behind me here. This place was cleared out. It's an overlooking place towards the fields in front of me. Saunders Field is directly ahead. It's about a mile down the road. Grant makes his headquarters out here with General Meade. He gets out here, and a reporter notices that he's sitting on a stump. He's whittling wood. He's making piles of shavings at his feet. He's constantly puffing on cigars. People are coming in and out of the camp, and he's sending orders out. He's talking to General Meade. General Meade is really directing a lot of the fight that's happening out here because Grant's not trying to step on anyone's toes. He's in charge of the entire army. General Meade is in charge of the Army of the Potomac. So General Meade is being advised by Grant, but General Meade's in charge. So out here in this location, something significant happens that kind of speaks to the type of relationship the two had with each other and the relationship that Meade actually had with his subordinates. Meade's out here, and Griffin comes riding up on a horse, and he's angry as hell. Nothing's going right for Griffin at the time. He jumps off that horse, and he passes Grant and goes directly to Meade. And he starts cursing up a storm. He starts yelling at Meade. He tells Meade that Warren has failed him. He tells Meade that his army has failed him. He tells Meade that even headquarters has failed him. Griffin hops back on his horse, rides off, still angry, and Meade's standing there, and he was calmly listening the entire time and not really going back at him. And Meade's known for his temper. Grant comes over to him, and he looks at him and says, "Who is this Gregg? Who is this General Gregg?" Meade looks at him and corrects him. He says, "It's not Gregg, it's Griffin." And he said, "That's just the way he talks." He reaches out to General Grant and, kind of like a father figure, buttons one of the buttons on the top of his coat and kind of dusts him off a little bit. It broke the tension between the two, and then Grant listened to him, walked away, and never talked about it again. He just let it go. And that showed the confidence that Meade had in his men, but it also showed the patience that Meade exhibited towards his men during battle as well. I mean, he could be an angry, ornery person to deal with, but he also understood the heated moment that they were in, and he understood why that man was feeling the way he was feeling. So stretching out directly behind me here is Saunders Field that we were talking about in the earlier videos. And you can see it. It's a wide open, beautiful plain out here. And it's one of the rare spots in the wilderness where the fields are cleared. The only time that you see cleared fields out here without trees are stretches of land that's developed by farmers. And in this neck of the woods, so to speak, there's really not that many farmlands that are cleared and developed out here. Even Elwood itself was like some 5,000-6,000 acres of land, and he only had about 100 acres developed, which was a lot at the time for farming. So you can understand why it is when they went into the fight out here, they ended up fighting each other in such horrible conditions for Napoleonic warfare. You can't really line your men up left to right, shoulder to shoulder, and march them across the field when there's a bunch of trees and briars in the way. And not to mention, when you're directing lines of men to go into battle and meet up with other lines, like what happened over my shoulder over here, you have confusion, just like you did when they wheeled to the left when they were supposed to meet up directly with the line on their right. Well, today is cold, wet. There's a light rain coming down. This morning it was slightly clear out here. But on July 2nd of 1863, it wasn't like that out here at all. It was clear out here, sunny, extremely hot, and the men were stirring around early in the morning trying to determine what the day was going to be like. Now, the leadership on the Confederate side had a plan, and it's nothing like what the movie depicts, nothing like what a lot of people say when they talk about this battle out here. And you don't really get a good grasp for it unless you come out here and talk to an actual licensed battlefield guide. I did that for the first time not too long ago, and really got an understanding for why the peach orchard was so important to all of this. And that's why we're doing this video. Mary Thompson had a house out here in Gettysburg, and it was a very small, modest house where she eked out a life here on the Seminary Ridge and had small farm plots and things like that. When Robert E. Lee heads into town, he needs a place to stay. He needs a headquarters that's going to be advantageous to himself. And he ends up staying right here at the Mary Thompson house on Seminary Ridge, which turns out to be the perfect place for him to be. He's got a visual in this house right here, all across the fields behind me. He has a visual of the town, and at the time, the town itself doesn't have as many buildings in as it does today. So that's kind of the unique feature out here, and the reason why Robert E. Lee decides to choose this house. right, so Tom, where exactly would Henry have been located during this battle in front of us here?
About 600 yards away from the house, that tree line over there, where the kind of the Longstreet Tower is the marker, a little closer to the road. Those guys, the marker for Taylor's Virginia Battery is there. So if you visit there, you see Taylor's Virginia Battery marker. That's where Henry was, and then they charged across the field toward this house.
And so he actually owned this portion of land that's out front here?
Yeah, his father owned this part. His father also owned a 9-acre rectangular plot right across the road there. And in 1850, he transferred that to Henry's ownership. We think he probably felt that Henry was getting some wanderlust, was going to leave, wanted to anchor him here in Gettysburg. So Henry owned that land. There's no record that he ever sold it until 1872. He didn't use it, but he officially owned it. So when they charged across the field, he was not only charging toward the house where he grew up, he was charging over land that he personally owned.
This battle would result in just next to nothing, really. Sherman comes up here, and a combined force of roughly 60,000 soldiers are out here against the small force of Confederate soldiers, and you end up with a major battle that takes place out here and 4,200 casualties as a result. It's really all for nothing, because the Confederacy was in its waning days, the very end of the end. Eventually, Robert E. Lee and his forces are surrendered. Eventually, the forces out here are surrendered. The end's pretty much near. You're talking about Fort Fisher falling in January, Wilmington's falling shortly after that, Bentonville here. It's pretty clear that the noose is being tightened around those Confederate forces and what's left of its government. And by the time this place is done and Robert E. Lee is pushed out and on the run, the entire government in Richmond is literally on the run. And it all becomes a footnote in history. Now, not every trail is what it seems to be. And out here in Williamsburg, the Civil War history is just kind of buried. You have to find it by going out into the fields and the woods to check out the earthworks, all the fortifications that are built that still exist out here in these locations. There's a park called Quarter Path Park, and it's right behind where the Fort Magruder Hotel is, the Hotel and Conference Center, which we're about to go over there here in a little bit and check out the conversation that's going to be had about the soldiers that were found in colonial Williamsburg. But you would never know that these earthworks existed out here unless you take that path or that road down here and see the Civil War Trail sign on the side of the road. It's 4:30 in the afternoon on April 9th, 1865. General Grant has just done talked to Robert E. Lee at the McLean House. He's had that conference, the very famous conference that happens there. And as he's riding away from the location where he just met with Lee, he decides to stop on the side of the road. And I'm walking out to the rise in the field right now here at Appomattox, where he actually made that stop. Somewhere out here in this field, he basically pulls his horse off to the side. He sits down and he scribbles on a note. They know it was a rise in the field, and that the sign details the information. And this is the rise in the field here, and I'll flip around so you can see it. Out here in this field, somewhere behind me, is where General Grant stopped to scribble that note. There was no gloating, there was no big celebration. It was a simple note to let Washington, D.C. and the President of the United States know that Robert E. Lee and the Army of Northern Virginia had surrendered here at Appomattox. That note makes its way to Washington, D.C., and by that evening, the bells are tolling and celebration is taking place. The hope of a nation coming back together and a new birth of freedom really takes place right here in this field behind me. An army composed of veterans calls up cadets, some as young as 15 years of age. The general, former Vice President of the United States, now fighting for the Confederacy. The opposing side, a German general whose army has lost all confidence in his leadership. A battle whose rate of casualties, 13% in some cases, is higher than such places as Fredericksburg by percentage. And a field that would forever be known for the shoes left behind. We're here at that place today. That place is New Market Battlefield. So now we're walking out through what was called the Field of Lost Shoes. I wanted to make sure to turn the camera around and point you in the direction of that field, because this is the path that's directly in the center of the line, and this is where the VMI cadets would have come through and lost their shoes. Not only did VMI cadets lose their shoes out here, other soldiers lost their shoes as well, because this was a wheat field at the time, And the days leading up to the battle saw a lot of rain out here. It's kind of like what it was the last couple days here in New Market. That rain, coupled with thousands of soldiers trampling across this field, pretty much made it unrecognizable as a wheat field. It was a muddy bog. And as the soldiers came through here, and those cadets came through here, they would step into the mud and their feet would sink down, and a suctioning effect would pull those large brogans off their feet. A lot of them had on shoes that were too large for their own feet. And this is where it all happened. The field of lost shoes. So out here in the trenches on Culp's Hill, just at the base, the 137th New York filed into line and stood fast to defend the earthworks that they were a part of, that they were into. And they had to defend it against North Carolinians, Marylanders, and Virginians. Some 2,000 soldiers were coming up into their position to fight them. Part of that unit was a man named Admiral T. Coon. Now, Admiral T. Coon had a pretty rough life growing up. He lost his mother, his two brothers, and his own father a long time ago. And he was left with his two sisters. And as a young man, him and his sisters grew up together, taking care of each other. But they did all right. Admiral T. Coon would find himself into the American Civil War. An actor and a bunch of listless characters that otherwise would have never been known in the history of this country and would have gone into obscurity, ends up plotting to do something that changes the course of history for many people. Today, we're out on the trail for the pursuit of John Wilkes Booth. So when you come out to battlefields, you generally focus in on the entirety of a battle and talk about the fight that happened out there, the massive troop movements and things like that. Well, I'm out of Gaines Mill today, and we're going to focus in on one particular unit that was out here. And we'll talk a little bit about them. We'll give the story of John Bell Hood. Realistically, here at this battle of Gaines Mill, this is where Lee realized that Texas always moves them, in his own words, from the Battle of the Wilderness in 1864. Here at Gaines Mill, that's where that really starts. So at some point in time, a Private John Summers had a white terrier out here that he named Candy. And this white terrier got separated from the unit and from the owner. Unfortunately for Private Summers, he would be killed out here on this field. His terrier would find his body. Candy would crawl up underneath the arm of John Summers and lay there with the body all day and all night and wait for someone to come. Finally, the forces would come around and find his body and cart him off to be buried. And people remarked at what a sad scene it was when they found that terrier laying underneath the arm of that soldier, still snuggling up to their friend, right to the bitter end. What does Culp's Hill and the 149th New York have to do with Dinwiddie Courthouse here near Petersburg, Virginia? Well, we're going to reveal that here pretty soon. Right here at Dinwiddie Courthouse, we got a story about a man that fought at Gettysburg, survived Gettysburg, but his story takes a drastic turn at the Battle of Dinwiddie Courthouse, March 31st, 1865. If you've ever wondered what it's like being inside the Monitor, this museum is probably about as close as it's going to get, as it takes you through several stations of what the Monitor would have looked like on the inside, including underneath where the turret was and the propeller shaft in the very end. And you can actually see the jack screw because it's here too. Well, I got a delay going out to Gettysburg, and I've always been one to never let that delay or obstacle get in the way of opportunity. Realizing that July was the same time frame that Malvern Hill was fought, just a year apart, I decided to come out here and tell the story on July 4th. It's an American story, but it's a story about a Confederate soldier who fought on these fields against the United States Army, and he lost his brother in combat. Now, when I get up to Gettysburg, we're going to tell the story again, but this time it's going to be about Pickett's charge and the events that took place up there with him surrounding a decision that one of his co-leaders made as they were coming across that field. It's going to wrap up this whole story, and it's going to make sense of why I talked about how nice he was. I hope you enjoyed the story, the video here on the 4th of July. I hope to have it published here shortly and put it out there for you so you can see it. Subscribe and like and hit that alert button. Until next time, this is History with Waffles. The majority of the time when stories are told out here, you usually hear a lot of stories about the large armies and the tactics that they used going out here to these battlefields. Well, today we're going to talk about a couple of soldiers, and these soldiers fought here at Little Round Top. They were brothers. One was in one location and one was actually here at Little Round Top. They called the Jones brothers. There's a real interesting picture that I've seen of a couple of brothers with the last name Jones. One's name is Adelbert and the other one is Orlo. Now Orlo in that picture is wearing a Zouave uniform, and he's with the 146th when he fights up here at Little Round Top. Adelbert, his brother, is with the 97th New York, and he ends up fighting on the other side of the battlefield away from where his brother is. But nonetheless, they both catch hell on the days that they fight out here. Adelbert is a sergeant when he first comes in to the military, and in 1861 that's when he would start his career in the United States Army. That didn't last very long. So sometimes out here on these fields, you don't have a whole lot of experience with what you're looking at or talking about. And I don't get out to Tennessee very often. So when I came out here, I decided that I had to reach out to the historian, Joseph Ricci, here at Franklin for the Franklin Battlefield Trust, correct?
Battle of Franklin Trust.
Battle of Franklin Trust. And he's going to walk us through a couple of spots out here at the Carter House and talk to us a little bit about this over here and bring something extra to this video that I don't often get with a lot of these videos. So I'm going to walk along with him, and he's going to tell us a little bit about the story here at this battlefield.
So we're on the south side of Franklin, about 25 miles south of Nashville, Tennessee, and we are at the Carter Farm. This was home to Fountain Branch and Polly Carter prior to the American Civil War. Fountain Branch and their family lived here from about 1829 right on up almost to the turn of the 20th century. By 1896, the last members of the Carter family leave here. But I think the thing that makes this place so special and of such note, and for all the Civil War junkies out there, is what happens here on the afternoon of November the 30th of 1864. Just to my right, looking south, this is where we'll see massive, massive hand-to-hand fighting, chaos, pandemonium, bedlam, as the Confederate divisions of General Patrick Cleburne and General John Calvin Brown crash through the center of the Federal line. All through this area here, major Confederate breakthrough about 200 yards wide, and it is here that men fight hand-to-hand, up close and in person. And right back here behind us, looking back towards our visitor center and extending across the road, brand new soldiers who've never been in combat before. And if you stop for just a second, there are so many people that visit here today, that work here today, that interpret this site. I've never been in combat. I've never even had to fire in anger at anybody before. My goodness gracious life, these young guys out from western portions of Missouri, Federal soldiers, having never seen action that afternoon, are met by two of the strongest divisions in General John Bell Hood's Confederate Army. And they hold on for dear life right back here behind us. The fighting that breaks out here still has tangible scars that you can see today. This is that tactile link to history, right? The thing that you're always looking for. Man, I want to touch it, I want to see it, I want to feel it, I want to be close to it. How much closer can you get than bullet damage done to the south-facing walls of the Carter's brick smokehouse here, or even more so, the wood frame structure of the Carter Farm Office? This building sat in roughly this location on the grounds here the day of the Battle of Franklin, and you can see just the bullet damage looking at the side of it. But as we step inside of it, that's when I think you get a really good grasp of what that combat looked like. And I always remind visitors, guests, friends, people like you that I'm just showing around, I always remind you, this is 5 hours of combat in a war that lasts for 4 years. This is 5 hours, 10,000 casualties, killed, wounded, captured, and missing. This shows you that intensity in a way that I don't think words can accurately describe. I don't think that we could get together on the battlefield and I can talk about, this regiment expended this many shots, this artillery battery fired 400 rounds. That doesn't show it to you quite like this wall can. And I think at the end of the day, you come to a place like this to maybe understand the intensity of the combat. Maybe you want to know something about the family or about the house or about the soldiers. At the end of the day, we all come to these sites, I think, to reflect on what was at stake from the years of 1861 to 1865. The very fate of this American Republic hung in the balance, even in those late days in November of 1864. And there is no better place to reflect on the potential loss of this great experiment in liberty and in self-government, quite like standing on a battlefield of the Civil War, and where better than here at the Carter Farm in Franklin, Tennessee.
Now, Chickamauga is what I like to call the Gettysburg of the West, if you will. There are a lot of the similar players here. You have Longstreet and Hood, who come out here in the nick of time to fight. And for the first time, you have Confederate superiority in numbers out here, unlike what was at Gettysburg. But the reason why I call this the Gettysburg of the West is because of how the field's preserved and how there are monuments and statues all over the place out here. Quite like Gettysburg, those old soldiers came back to this field time and time again, and they dedicated monuments out here. It's a real neat place to visit. James Anderson would go on from here pretty much unscathed. Some of his family members weren't as lucky. He had an uncle that was shot out here and killed, and he had another cousin that was wounded. On the other side, he had an uncle by the name of Barron who was with the cavalry that was fighting, and his uncle would come away from here pretty good too. But these family members were fighting each other out here. One south, one north. Both of them from North Carolina. James Anderson would go on to be captured at the Battle of Resaca. After Resaca, he would escape, make his way back to the forces just in time to be down at the Battle of Mobile Bay and Spanish Fort, where he would take a bullet to the chest and be carted off at the end of the war. And then he would be taken prisoner right at the end of 1865 as they were evacuating Spanish Fort. James Anderson would take the oath of allegiance, and as a very, very young man, go back to North Carolina and live out the rest of his days until he was 78 years of age when he died of a stroke. He has a cemetery in Carolina that's named after him. Now, at the beginning of all of this, I talked about how many people are connected to this stuff, and they come out to these fields trying to gain a connection. Well, my connection to Chickamauga is James Anderson, because he's my third great grandfather. His uncle is my family too. They were all out here fighting each other for one side or the other, for whatever reason that they're fighting. And the Union loses this battle, but secures victory in the war. It's stories like these that I like to tell, because I like to bring the connection to people in their lives for this war. I want them to feel more connected to it. And if I can tell the story of the common soldier out here, maybe it brings a little bit something extra to the story itself. It just so happens, though, the story this time is from my very own family. Well, it's been great taking you out here to Chickamauga. I hope you've enjoyed the trip. Just like any other large battle, I can't really do it justice, but I did my best out here to cover the majority of the fighting in some of the more important places, so that you can get a brief overview of what it was like fighting here and the outcome itself. Until next time, from right here at the home of the Rock of Chickamauga, it's History with Waffles. I really couldn't think of a better way to end this video than crawling through these trees here near the Roses farm, across this stream, up to the loop. It's been a lot of fun taking you guys out here to Gettysburg to talk about the Battle of the Peach Orchard and try to connect this. I know I can't do it justice. I could probably do this a million times over and not fully tell the entire story, because it's such a large story to tell and a lot of history to cover in just a couple of short days. But I did my best, and I really hope you guys enjoy this video and come back for more. Please subscribe. You guys keep me going. And yeah, just check out all the good history that's out there. Until next time, this is History with Waffles.